Hello everybody, this is Michelle Fox and welcome back to The Simple Quilter. I'm really excited today. This is the first mug rug for the monthly Magic Sew Along, and I think the project turned out pretty cute, so I'm anxious to show you. But I do want to tell you a couple of things. Number one, I had talked about the fabric, and you can use your scraps or you can use a coordinated fabric line. And the fabric line that I decided to use, a coordinated fabric line, I was going to use my scraps, but I decided I wanted a specific look. So I used one of my favorite fabric lines, which is an older one. I don't even know if you can find it. Well, you can find a few pieces of it. It's called Aspen Frost by Basic Gray, and I've used that to complete my first mug rug. Now, if you want to use those coordinated fabrics, you go right ahead and do that. If you want to use your scraps, you do that too. Now, another thing I wanted to tell you is I do not typically starch my fabric before I start. But as I was putting this project together, I realized I had some really small pieces, so I did. I pre-starched just the strips that I was going to use. I didn't spray starch, you know, the fat quarters or anything like that. I just cut my strips a little bit wider before I subcut all my pieces, and I starched those heavily. And I just used the Faultless spray starch, and I used the heavy. And again, I don't typically do that, but I don't typically sew with these smaller pieces. And I do have to say, it did make a big difference. Now, if you're going to do that, you need to spray your fabric in advance. Cut it a little bit larger because it will shrink a little bit when you spray it real heavily, and then you have to let it dry. It really did make a difference when I spray starched it, and it was a lot easier to work with those small pieces with the fabric heavily starched. Okay, so those are the two things I wanted to tell you, and now I want to show you the mug rug. Okay, so here is the mug rug, and I think it turned out just really, really nice. It's just a little stocking cap because it's always cold in January. I really like this light aqua color and this darker red together. And you can see I just used some of the pieces from the fabric line here. Now, the first pieces you'll need to cut for the hat. These are the pieces that you're going to need to cut for the hat. Okay, first of all, these pieces right here, there's a top and a bottom, and I cut those 1 1/4 by 6 1/4. So this and this are 1 1/4 by 6 1/4. Okay, then the piece for the hat trim, that's this piece right here. That is 1 3/4 by 4 3/4. Then I snowballed these corners. These are tiny little corners that I snowballed. And these squares are 3/4 by 3/4 inches, and you will need 6 of those. Now, on either side of the hat trim, you're going to need a piece here and here that's 1 1/4 by 1 3/4. Okay. Then for the hat itself, you're going to need a piece that is 3 by 4 1/4. And then the corners here are snowballed, and these were 1-inch squares, and you will need 2 1-inch squares. The pieces that will go next to the hat, the main piece of the hat, are 1 1/2 by 3 inches. So these pieces right here are 1 1/2 by 3 inches. Okay, then for the pom-pom, right here, you're going to need a 1 3/4 inch square. And then the little pieces, the 3/4 inch pieces that you use down here, you'll use up here on the pom-pom. So you'll need 4 for here and 2 for the hat trim. Okay, now on either side of the pom-pom, you're going to need a piece that is 1 3/4 by 2 3/4. And then up here, you're going to need a piece that is 1 1/4 by 6 1/4. All right. Then the pieces over here to the side, you're going to need to cut 4 pieces that are 2 inches by 4 inches. And those will go along the side just like that. Now, while we're at it, I do want to tell you that I cut the backing 9 by 11 and the batting 8 by 10 1/2, just so you'll have those measurements when you're ready. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your squares, and on the wrong side, be sure you've got the wrong side, you're going to draw a little line from corner to corner on all of the squares. You should have a total of 8 squares. You should have 6 squares that are 3/4 of an inch, and you should have 2 squares that are 1 inch. And you're going to want to do that with all of your squares. Now, if you have one of these booklets here that I made, this is a good place to hold this so these little pieces don't shift around. If you want to know more about this project, you can check out the link above for this. Now the first thing you're going to want to do, you're going to want to take your hat trim, your hat, and your pom-pom, and you're going to want to snowball these corners. Okay, that's the right side of all of them. And you're just going to put your little squares here and here. Just going to start laying those down on there, and you're going to just sew them. You're going to sew on the little lines. On each of those, you're just going to sew right across. So let me show you what that's going to look like. So now that you have those, you're going to sew right on the line, or you can sew just right there on the line. And your pieces are going to look like this. This is the pom-pom, the main piece of the hat, and then the little trim. Okay, and you're going to press those really good. Then you're just going to go in here and you're just going to start trimming. You're going to trim those down to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, then once those are trimmed, what I do is I press them completely back like that. Okay, I'm going to go press these, and then I'll show you what it looks like on the back. Okay, so you can see on the back how I have those sewn. Okay, now you can see on the back how they look. Okay, so what we're going to do next is I have the pieces laid out that I cut and that I told you about, and we're just going to sew them together in rows. So these two will go here, these two will go here, and these will go here. And once I have those sewn together, I'll show you how those look when they're finished. Okay, so you can see how I got those pieces sewn together. Now, for the top one, for the pom-pom, I pressed outward just to help it lay flat. On this one, I pressed inward. Now you can press outward if you want, but I pressed mine inward. On this one, I pressed them outward. Okay? Now, when you go to sew these together, the only thing you're going to line up are the ends. None of the seams are going to meet here. Don't even try. Now, some of you may be worried about these little snowball corners here. Don't, because when you sew it, they're going to look just fine. If you've maintained a good scant 1/4 of an inch seam, and when you sew these together, it's going to turn out looking just fine. Right there, okay? So, I'm going to get these sewn together. Now, once you've got it pressed, it's going to look like this. Now, this piece is oversized just a little bit. Okay, so these pieces are a little bit oversized, and I will trim those down. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your 4 2 by 4 inch strips and organize them in whatever fashion you see fit. You can arrange those however you want. And you're just going to sew those together, and you're going to press them. Then once you have those pressed, they'll be ready to add. Now I want to show you here. See, you can see how these need to be trimmed down. So this right here is 6.5 inches. So I'm just going to trim this up to 6.5 inches. And I'm just going to try to have the same distance on each side. Okay, and I'm just going to trim this up again to 6.5 inches. Okay. Then I'm going to sew these two pieces together here. Okay. So there you have that. Now this is ready to machine quilt. Now I want to show you something. If you can see right here, that this piece, it looks like it was a little short, but that's okay because at the very end, this whole piece will be trimmed down to 6 by 9 inches when it's finished. All of these mug rugs will trim down to 6 by 9. That's my favorite size of mug rug. So that's what that will be trimmed down to. Let me show you. My backing piece is 9 by 11. My batting is 8 by 10.5. Then you're just going to put this on here. Now I did spray baste it all, and then you're going to machine quilt it. And then when you're finished, you trim this whole thing down to 6 by 9. And I ended up cutting a little bit of this off, and I cut enough off of here to make it equal on these sides. But it trims it, then I just trimmed it down to 6 by 9, machine quilted it. And as you could see, I did my favorite straight line quilting, which I have a video on that I'll put a link up there for. And then if you need help doing machine binding, I have a video on that also. But you can see it just turned out really nice. Okay, now we'll just take that and put it in our notebook. And January is complete. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed making this block, this little mug rug. I think it turned out really great. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you want to let me know what fabric line you use, put that in the comments below. If you want to tell me if you use scraps, put that in the comment below. But quilting it and binding it really shouldn't take you very long because it's such a small project. Okay, so January is done. Next month I'll be showing you how to make the February mug rug. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Please share with a friend. And as always, leave a comment. I love to get the comments, and I do try to reply to each and every one. So until next time, have fun quilting.